And thank you everyone for coming along today and for your interest in our programs. I'm going to talk for maybe 10 minutes just to give you an overview of some of the programs, and then hand over to Zoe. And as I say, there's lots of options for questions to follow. And to start, I'm the School of Archaeology's graduate director, so I'm the academic who's responsible for all of our taught masters programs. I'm also the program coordinator for our hunter-gatherer archaeology program. So each program has an academic who looks after that, and then I'm also looking over the programs as a whole. And just before starting on that, the many years ago, when I did a master's program, that was a one-year taught master's program. That was one of the most transformative experiences of my life. I hadn't got on very well with my bachelor's degree, didn't really know what I wanted to do, was in slightly the wrong subject. But it was the master's year, that wonderful, intense master's year, where I felt that there was a whole new world of different professional possibilities opening up to me, a different way of seeing and understanding, different ways of learning, different ways of interacting with staff members and my peers. That was genuinely transformative for me. And many of the friends I made in that master's year remain my friends now, and then you're talking over 25 years ago on that. So master's education has always been really, really important to me, because I've personally experienced the transformation that can lead to. So delighted to be working again at UCD in the master's education space. So the four programs I'm talking about today, the MSc Archaeology, the MSc Experimental Archaeology and Material Culture, Hunter-Gatherer Archaeology, and the World Heritage Management and Conservation program. These are all of our campus-based programs. All of the teaching here is done on campus, supported by some digital present, but these are in-person courses. We do have an online World Heritage program. I'm not going to speak about that today, but if anyone is interested in it, please drop us a line and we can talk to you about that. That's a distance learning program. But we have the four different programs. Just to give you a kind of overview here, the MSc Archaeology is a general archaeology program with a particular focus on landscape archaeology and material culture. Many of the field trips that program takes you on will be to Irish landscapes, but it's not specifically a program about Irish archaeology, and you don't have to work on Irish archaeology if you're doing that program. You can, and you're very welcome to, but it's not a necessary part of it. The Experimental Archaeology and Material Culture program kind of does what it says on the tin. This is a program focused on experimental archaeology, on how learning to make and use past technologies improves the archaeological process and improves our understanding of past societies. And that's a very, very hands-on and practical program. People get the opportunity to do lots of experiments, to work with lots of different materials, all under the expert supervision of my colleague Brendan, who runs those programs. The hunter-gatherer program is focused particularly on hunter-gatherer archaeology, so the earlier parts of prehistory, and has a very, very strong fieldwork component in that. The students get to come along on our excavations in Scotland and in other places in Ireland. And the World Heritage Management and Conservation Program is really looking at the way in which World Heritage designation influences the management of both cultural and natural heritage. So it has that dual focus. Some of it is on the built heritage and the cultural heritage, but some of it is on biological heritage as well. And students from that program are trained to think through the issues involved in managing World Heritage sites, how to deal with conflict and problems, that interface between natural landscapes and cultural landscapes, and much, much more. Now, all of these programs share the same structure. and they actually share modules. So although you might be a student doing a World Heritage program, you could be taking modules in the hunter-gatherer program or the experimental archaeology program. Or if you're a student in the archaeology program, you could be doing stuff in the World Heritage program. So the classes are very, very mixed. But basically, across the, I'll talk about the full-time program, across the 3 trimesters of the academic year, autumn, spring, and summer, the autumn and spring trimesters, you would be doing taught modules through those trimesters, normally 3 modules in each trimester. Some of those are cores and some of those are options for you to choose from. But it will be just 3 modules per trimester, which means that those are in-depth modules. You can really do a lot of reading, lots of working around the issues themselves. And the teaching at master's level is very much student-led. There might be some aspect of lectures with discussions to follow, but the core of the programs is based around seminars where you've done the reading and you're exploring the topic. It's based around practicals. It's based around lab sessions. It's based around field trips and field work, but the onus very much on the student driving that. And those modules will be assessed by a variety of different things. Some of it is essays, some might be projects, some might be group work, some will be practical exercises you're undertaking. None of our modules, you'll be delighted to hear, have any exams at the end of them. It's all just continuous assessment and quite diverse assessment. And so you do the taught modules in autumn and spring, and then in the summer you move to work on your dissertation, which is a 15,000 word dissertation, which you've got it works out in the end about 3 months to work exclusively on that under the supervision of an academic staff member as well. And that's a wonderful opportunity to actually develop your own research questions and to execute that research project. Zoe and I have just nipped out today is actually the day when all of our master's students are presenting their dissertation ideas to the school as a whole. And they've had this fascinating morning with a huge range of different topics that people are working on. So the dissertations are really important. That's something you own, that's yours, and you can really develop. All of the master's programs are really bound up with the research that the school does. And as I say, on some of the programs, you'll come on field work with the school. In other ones, you might be working on a lab project with people. There's lots of volunteering opportunities in that sense. We have an active school seminar series, which you're very welcome to come along to, and that gives you a sense of the diversity of issues there. But the research runs through the entirety of the master's program, and on a number of the modules you'll have guest lecturers as well, who might be postdocs or PhD students in the school or people from outside, but very much early career people to give you that sense of new ideas. And as well as what's in the formal modules and what's on your reading lists, there's also a welcoming community for you across those 4 programs. So there are those opportunities for volunteering. There are coffee mornings. Some of the programs have their own book clubs, which are led by the students, and they determine what they want to read. There are extra opportunities for training. We ran a special afternoon session on geophysical survey just a couple of weeks ago because there was a demand for that from the students. And the master's students are a huge part of the community of the school and create a really strong community themselves as well. Across those 4 programs, we normally have about 35 or 40 master students in total. Some of the programs have 15 to 20 students in a normal year, some have closer to 10, but it normally works out as about 35 to 40. So there's a good sized community there to support you when you're here, when you're there in the school. Just say something quickly about what happens in terms of after the master's program, and there'll probably be lots of questions about that. So after the master's program, typically our students have done one of a number of things. Many of them, particularly in recent years, have gone on to work in the commercial archaeology sector in Ireland. That's been a really strong path. There's a lot of demand for archaeologists at the moment, and our master's students seem to be seem to be appreciated by the commercial archaeology companies. We also have people who go off into different professional directions as well. We've had people ending up working in the state sector in terms of the museums and those sorts of things. We have a number of our master's students who will stay on and undertake PhD research with us, sometimes obtaining funding from the appropriate state bodies there to facilitate that. And many people, they kind of use their dissertation as a trial run, if you like, for going on to PhD level research. And some people, after they finish the masters, they go back home, and maybe say something later about the diversity of our programs. They go back home and they continue to work professionally in archaeology or World Heritage Management there as well. So there's a lot of diversity in all of that. I think probably just to close off and then allow Zoe to say a few words. The entry requirements for the programs are, generally speaking, there's a little bit of variation here, but generally speaking, it will be a 2-1 or equivalent. And those of you not from the Irish system, we can work with UCD International Office to offer precise translations of what that might mean in terms of GPAs. And normally we ask for archaeology or a cognate discipline. So things like history or anthropology are very much cognate disciplines. The experimental archaeology program has a slightly broader series of entry requirements because they'll accept people from a background in craft and with those practical skills. And the World Heritage program, again, is a little bit more diverse, reflecting the diversity of those programs. But if you've got any questions about whether your background means are you eligible for these programs, just drop us a line and we can talk our way through that and work out those sorts of things. That, I think, at the moment is all I want to say. There's a few other things that I suspect that will come up in terms of questions and discussions. We're a very friendly and welcoming school, and the master's students are a huge part of that and are very important to us. With that, I will hand over to Zoe, who is currently our class rep for the MSc Archaeology program. Zoe.
Yeah, thanks, Graeme. As Graeme said, I am currently pursuing the MSc Archaeology program, and we are in the thick of our dissertation prep and doing some beginning research. So that's been exciting, and I get to see what everybody is working on now. So I am from the United States, and I chose to study at UCD because I was particularly interested in Irish history and archaeology. And I had a sense that the archaeology program here was really strong because of the graduates that it had produced, some of which being some of the scholars that I really enjoyed reading during undergrad. So I sort of followed that path here. I actually studied art history in undergrad, but I participated in an archaeology project in County Roscommon in each summer, starting from 2017 into 2022 here. And I really just fell in love with Ireland and thought that staying here and studying the foundation of archaeology would help me on my journey to work in the field of heritage or in a museum setting later on. So I will say, though, that you really don't need previous experience in Irish archaeology. It's not really necessary coming into any of these programs. They're definitely designed to accommodate every level of interest and knowledge. And again, as Graeme was saying, the modules that I've taken at UCD here are really broad, and I'm able to sort of cross the lines between each of the programs in that way. And they've really opened my eyes to think about the possibilities that archaeology can create going into more interdisciplinary approaches to things. And especially with the field methods module that we just had these past 2 weeks at the Center for Experimental and Material Culture on campus, we just went through an entire archaeology dig from start to finish using a previous experimental Mesolithic hut that had collapsed. So I would say that this practical experience here is really something that you might not get anywhere else. It's really unique that we have this experimental center here. And again, I'm not in the particular experimental program, but I was able to participate and use those resources there as well. So I'll also say that our relationships with our professors and module coordinators are really, really great. We've been able to create sort of one-on-one relationships with those professors as we've gone along, probably because we have, the cohort number is enough that everybody sort of knows everybody, and we create that community there. And then also in terms of just the professors' knowledge and their own expertise, there's such a broad range across the school, and I have particularly been able to tap into that expertise for my dissertation and for other research questions as I've gone along. And again, that really, I think, is helped because there's many of them, and there's many faculty, and there's maybe not as many of us, so we're really able to create that great relationship. So I guess after graduation, I would hope to work in a museum setting sort of broadly, or in the heritage sector, either here in Ireland or back home in the States. And I would say that everything I've learned here, the skills, like understanding object biography, proper handling of objects and artifacts, they really have all boosted me into that line of going forth in that career path. So overall, I would definitely recommend this program to anybody interested, like Graeme said, not just in our Irish archaeology. You can find your field of study here as well. Even if you come in not knowing exactly what you want to do, you'll find it here, because there are so many different interests and professors with expertise that you can really tap into. So I think whatever you choose, you'll find it here. There's just so many opportunities.
Thank you very much, Zoe. That was a very interesting presentation. And thank you, Graeme. Zoe, can I ask you one question, please? Could you just talk to some of our webinar participants today about your experience as an international student coming to study at UCD or Dublin?
Yeah, I think at the beginning it was very overwhelming, and seemed like all of the sort of tasks that needed to be done would never get done. Like, there is a laundry list of things that you have to do as an international student, GARDA vetting, paying the correct fees, and getting your bank account set up and things like that. But like, it will all get done. And I really wish I hadn't stressed as much in looking back, because there is a lot of support systems here that just everybody here is so helpful, and like everything got done. I'm sitting here today because I was able to get through all the processes that seem like not fun, but you get through them and you're here. And as an international student, it's kind of there's a large community of international students, particularly in archaeology, so I don't feel out of place at all. There's a lot of Americans and people from other backgrounds as well. So
I might just add to that, and thanks very much, Zoe. I was going to say something anyway about the diversity of the programs, and in terms of national background, the programs are really quite diverse. The experimental, the hunter-gatherer, and the archaeology would have reasonably, I think the hunter-gatherer program is about 50% American students at the moment. The other ones are probably similar. There are people from Europe as well. The World Heritage program actually tends to be perhaps the most diverse globally. People coming from professional backgrounds across the world coming into UCD to join for the year. So there's a very good background diversity in terms of background. The programs also bring in people from different career stages. We have people who've just come straight through from school, sorry, from college, not school, you know what I mean there. We have people who've been working in archaeology for 5 or 10 years who've decided to come back. And we have people who perhaps are a little later on in their professional career and are deciding to try a completely different direction. And that diversity is hugely important, because you end up with really, really interesting discussions. All those people bring very, very different perspectives. So if you're talking about the ethics of archaeological practice, or the way in which in different countries heritage is managed, people have those different experiences to draw upon. The school has a very strong commitment to diversity. We were one of the first schools in UCD to receive an Athena Swan Award, which is an award given to schools who've done an analysis of gender equality within the school and identified a plan to improve gender equality. So there were some places where we could identify that females were underrepresented in the school, and there were other places where males were underrepresented in the school. So we're trying to balance those sorts of things, but making that diverse and inclusive environment is really important to us, because that diversity, the diversity of our students, brings great strength to the program. So it's a really key part of who we are.
Thank you, Graeme. Could I ask you another question that's occurred to me as part of what you were just speaking about there? Could you talk to us a little bit about the part-time structures on our postgraduate courses, and how feasible would a part-time approach be for an applicant or a potential applicant who may be working part-time at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Fiona, before I come to that, I realize I forgot to say something important in my introduction. So can I maybe say that first and then come to the part-time thing? And this was just to say, and Zoe mentioned it as well, that one of the interesting and distinctive features about UCD is what we call the Centre for Experimental Archaeology and Material Culture. And this is a dedicated space on campus where we can carry out our archaeological experimentation. And that's very, very unusual to have one of those on campus. But this is a dedicated space where we've been able to construct prehistoric and historic buildings, where we carry out flint working. Remarkably, we've managed to persuade UCD Health and Safety to let us do metal working as well. So students quite often are making bronze artifacts or iron artifacts, all using ancient techniques in different ways. But that's a 5-minute walk away from the lecture theatres. And there's then a dedicated indoor laboratory for those spaces as well, for more of the mucky and messy part of experimentation, but also backed up by microscopes, by 3D scanning technologies. So all of that is there on campus. And that's where the Mesolithic hut that Zoe mentioned, that was an experiment which I carried out about 6 or 7 years ago. We built a piece of hunter-gatherer architecture, and then it fell down, and we were able to excavate it and understand the traces of that. So that CMAC, the Centre for Experimental Archaeology and Material Culture, is a really important resource. Now, you asked me about part-time students. So the program is available part-time, which all of these programs are available part-time, which is then to be carried out over 2 years. And generally, we work with students and their individual requirements to work out what should they do in the first year and what should they do in the second year. Maybe that's because they've got caring commitments. Maybe that's because of other professional commitments. But that's really quite varied. The only kind of fixed thing is that the dissertation comes at the end. We don't recommend you do your dissertation in the first year. So some of the students try and do lots of their core modules in the first year. Others, for timetable reasons, have to mix those a little bit more, but that's really almost on a one-to-one basis. You certainly work with the students to try and work out how are they best going to be able to structure their timetable. And we are currently this year working to see if we can simplify our timetable a little bit more. At the moment, we're spread across quite a few days of the week. We're trying to work out if we can simplify that a little bit more, so it will be fewer days of the week that people would need to make a commitment to be with us. In terms of whether people can fit this alongside part-time jobs, or some people try and do this alongside full-time jobs, again, that's really down to the individuals. we work on the basis that a full-time student is someone who is working about 7.5 or 8 hours a day. It's like a job. It's that kind of timing, and that's built into our expectations. So if you're a part-time student and you're doing half the courses, let's say in a given trimester, we're going to assume that you're doing about 2.5 days of work. How you exactly do that, whether that has to be 9 to 5 or whether you work that in a different time, that again, that's up to the individual circumstances there. But those are the types of expectations we can sit and talk through. And maybe a student needs to have a quieter spring trimester and do more work in the autumn trimester. Again, we can balance those things out. So anyone who is thinking about the part-time programs, I'd strongly recommend that they arrange a chance to talk to their program coordinator, because they'll actually be able to help them navigate all of those sorts of choices. But it is, because of the different backgrounds that people are coming from, it's a really very individual thing. We always get there in the end. We work our way around all of this, but it's a very, very individualistic way of negotiating it.